Good day, everybody! How's it going out there? Oh, we're getting in mid-December. I'm too lazy to put on my suit right now, but I'm back. The previous week's episode that you saw was recorded before I went to the convention because I got a bit of con crud. It's always good to come prepared in case I get that. But my immunity system's like, we're gonna fight, and I'm gonna beat you. I'm gonna beat that con crud. Build up my immunities. You share the love. You share the love to the charity. You share the love by giving. It's the giving time of year, and you gave me something. But I fought it. I won. I'm back. Here we go. So, the episode you've been waiting for. Actually, so a year ago on this channel, I made a prediction about a particular large furry convention in Chicago overtaking a large furry convention in Pittsburgh and sort of the whole thing in whole shebang. You can watch that video up here, on that card. So, guess what happened? They did it! They did it. Yeah, Midwest Furfest became the largest furry convention in the world as of this year. So congratulations to them and their staff and the people who organized it and got it going. There was some bitty bumps this year. One particularly dealing with attendance, having to deal with the long lines at registration. So for those of you who don't know about that story, basically the summary is that the registration lines got extremely long because of, for one, the record-setting attendance, and number two, apparently a new system they sort of tried to implement this year for registering people and having the data out there was implemented into some sort of cloud-based system, and the internet sort of went crappity crap during the first few moments of the convention. So getting that information of the registries up to the cloud was having a bit of an issue. I kind of compared it to another similar issue that happened this year in Chicago with a nerd sort of gathering, which was the Pokemon Go thing in Central Park, where they had so many people show up and start trying to use the Pokemon Go app that it bogged down the internet something fierce and basically ruined the entire event. Luckily, this Midwest Furfest wasn't that bad, but it does put in some things into mind. Number one, obviously stress test any new systems that you implement on the convention's part. But more importantly, I think as what can we do as people who are not part of the convention, I think more, planning and pre-registering a little bit more would have helped the situation a little bit. There were certain times during the convention where I heard that they basically allowed people who were not pre-reg to get into the pre-reg line because the pre-reg line had basically cleared out. So the people who were working the pre-reg side could help with the registration side. Some people tried to, it's like, well, why didn't more volunteers come in? Obviously they needed help, but the issue with registration is that you have to do background checks on those guys. So because they're dealing with personal information, they know your real name, they know your furry name, they know the difference, the ties between the two. They couldn't really bring in more volunteers in the moment to sort of do the registration process because it deals with personal information. And so background checks and, ensurety that, those kind of things wouldn't happen were necessary, so they really couldn't increase the manpower. And on top of that, manpower wasn't really fully the issue. It was more a logistical thing with the new system and its issues. They eventually did get through all that, and they did get their record-sending amount of people. I think they had to round this year because they didn't really have time to be precise with the numbers, so they said we had 8,700 attendees, which I don't think it was that exact number. It's probably just an estimation. Probably due to the fact it's like, well, we got a lot of people, let's just freaking do it, and let's not care about getting a precise count this year. Let's just get through this registration process. But they got through it, and they did it. They did the hard work that they needed to do. But more importantly, pre-registering more for furries, particularly for Midwest Furfest. If you didn't know, if you pre-register for Midwest Furfest before the end of September, typically they will give you a $10 discount on the regular attendance. So you save some money by doing that. I do that usually every year. If I'm going to Midwest Furfest, I will register, in late September. After making that decision, then I'll register my flights and do all that stuff at that time. So you can save some money doing that, but more importantly, you save time when you get there. You don't want to spend all that time standing in line. I heard around 3 hours was like one person's estimates of how long it took them to get from the back of the line to the registration at one point. So save yourself some time, save yourself some money maybe if you do it early enough, pre-register. That being said, it was interesting attending this convention with the knowledge that it was very more than likely going to surpass things that with personal experience. Because, hey, it feels great to be right about something, I guess, but, I guess it's the talent that I have is like being able to predict furry convention attendance rates. Not a very useful talent, I guess. It's my superpower, man. I can predict furry attendance rates. But, I put a big bet on it, too. Like, I made an article before I had actually left for the convention itself, which is seen in the description below, actually discussing, talking about the rise of Midwest Furfest. It's the largest furry convention in the world, and, obviously paying homage to Anthrocon, is having been the largest furry convention for about 17 years before that. So I had, I actually pre-written everything before I left. Most of the stuff there, I added a little section about the attendance issue, or the attendee sort of registration issue. I added a paragraph about that because I thought it was relevant to the topic at hand. But I had pre-planned a lot of this stuff too. This thing I had commissioned in April, the headliner photo for it, I had commissioned from Selkie Gal April of that year. And so I hedged my bet on it pretty big. I guess I figured it's like, because that would have been embarrassing. I made this art, I had this artwork commissioned and then they wouldn't have gotten the top spot. That would have been like, oh man, there goes that money. There was a second thing I was worried about. There was two things that could have messed up my article seriously hard. Number one is that Midwest Furfest didn't, overtake Anthrocon as the largest furry convention in the world, but I was 90% sure it was going to happen, so I just went with it. Number two, what could have happened is that, thank God this didn't happen, but something like 2014 on steroids could have happened where, some jerk and arsehole decided to freaking do something terrible at the convention that would have harmed actual furries or done things that could have made people, heaven forbid, lose their freaking lives. And that was something in the back of my mind too. It's like, God damn it. He's like, don't do it this year, please, for the. It's like, so basically, because if that was the case, then having an article about it's the biggest furry convention wouldn't have been in good taste, because then the bigger news story would have been the tragedy that what would have allegedly occurred. Luckily and thankfully to the Lords above that didn't happen, and that the convention went basically smoothly. They had a little hindrances here and there, and I'll make additional videos about those little things. But for a full reading on the article and the history of Midwest Furfest, go down to the article in the description below. I go over the hard year that they had this year, dealing with their volunteers. In addition, there was. So I guess I should describe this picture a little bit. There's a lot of little symbology here. The raccoon in the front is obviously their mascot for Midwest Furfest. They're riding a horse that has the 4 stars, which is the flag of Chicago. The guy behind them is the horse just behind them is Anthrocon, with the CEO of Anthrocon, Kage, which is his samurai roach character, giving a cheers because he's known for his drinking of wine, to the new lead horse in the pack. They're on a horse that has some symbology of the city of Pittsburgh's flag. The black and yellow is sort of a motif on that. And the guys in the far back are 3 individuals who had heavy ties with Midwest Furfest who had unfortunately lost their lives over the course of the last year. Quasi Skunk is a volunteer in the very far back who lost their life in a car accident on their way home from 2016's Midwest Furfest. The dog character at the very bottom is Takaza Wolf, who lost their lives in a heart attack this March, who was he was the con chair for about 4 years at Midwest Furfest in 2 different terms, I believe. So that's just going from memory. And then there's Rabbit T. Rabbit, who was the very first guest of honor at the very first Midwest Furfest in the year 2000, who is known for their television show and things like that. And they also lost their lives this year. So it's been a rough year, but it's been a year of growth. Like communities move forward, and even those who, we lose people over time, and we still trek on forward and do the best we can. And so I think that's sort of the idea behind this photo. So that being said, I think it was very well done. She did a very good job, and I'm glad that I had commissioned her for it. Go show your love. I'll put a link in the description below for her Weasel account. You can go follow her there. That's her website of choice, is weasel.com. So that being said, what was else? It was interesting being part of the festivities, and also, when it came to this one being the largest one in the convention space, it was actually very interesting to hear that rumor sort of going around every once in a while, going like, oh man, this might be the largest one this year. This one might be the largest one this year. And it's always extremely interesting when you have those doubters. Like, there's always going to be a doubter, like people who don't really pay attention to that. They're in the furry fandom to enjoy themselves. They don't pay attention to the numbers, and the numbers aren't really that significant anyway. But it's always a cool little trivia thing to do, and it's like, you hear someone say it to somebody else, like, I'm doubtful. And I'm like, no, man, it's probably going to happen. So it's like, it's kind of one of those cool things. It's like, I have nerd numbers. It's always like, and by the way, when you're talking to people who might not have the knowledge, it's important that you don't be a jerk about it. Like, I've seen a lot of people who, people who are ignorant and stuff like that. They're ignorant for good reasons. Like, they're enjoying themselves, they're having a good time. So it's like you talk about like the conventions and stuff like that, and it's an interesting conversation piece. But knowing that, knowing something and explain to it, everyone's excited to have knowledge and share it with people. But it's important that if they're not interested in the knowledge that you have, you just kind of let them go and have their fun. It's one of those things. But it's like, it was kind of cool to see it happen. They were very humble about it as far as like the official like means of it. They didn't really concentrate or focus on that in the closing ceremonies. Ironically, they did it less than I thought they would. They did do like a little homage thing where they're like, we did it. They had like a little words, we did it, flashing at the bottom. But they didn't really harp on the fact that their numbers were the largest of the year. They just sort of, said it, and then they sort of, we did it, and then they moved on. They spent more time on the generosity of the charity during the closing ceremonies. Particularly, basically, they raised $85,000 for CRISP, which is I believe it's an institution that works with local pet owners and tries to help them pay any veterinary bills and stuff like that. I believe that's one of their big things. At least that's what I got from the closing ceremonies. And we gave them enough money to keep them in funding for a few years. They were in the red before they came to the convention. So they got a total of $85,000. And by the way, they raised about $12,000 of that at the closing ceremonies itself, which is insane. It's like, let's hope we don't do that too much in the future. It's like you're gonna have to have security people or something, like escorting people around because all that money getting thrown around. That's kind of crazy, man. Like, that's a lot of money getting thrown around at the end and close of ceremonies. And a lot of quick counting, by the way. That's impressive. Like, I'm impressed that you guys could count up that much money that quickly. What do you guys got back there? Anyways, I think that's about it. Oh, well, so since I made predictions in 2017 and they came to light pretty much, anything, I guess the question that I should finally answer is anything interesting going to happen in 2018 at this point? Is anything interesting going to happen? Well, yeah, but not really. It's sort of yes and no. So I updated my charts and I made updated my projections. A lot of people are wondering, is Anthrocon and Midwest Furfest going to have this little back and forth? according to my projections, it's not going to be the case. If anything, Midwest Furfest may start pulling away from Anthrocon. So Anthrocon will be sitting in a comfortable second. Biggest Little Fur Con shows that it might grow and start catching up with Anthrocon a little bit more. However, there's a huge asterisk next to that because Biggest Little Fur Con has a big issue with the locale and the location that it has. Reno is a very expensive place to fly into, and also it is also a tourist trap in a way. There are other things competing against furry at every particular time, and the place that hosts them obviously has to consider that they want to have gamblers around too, and apparently furries aren't big on the whole loot box gambling thing. Unless they're loot boxes, then we're fine with it. But they're not big on the whole casino thing, and obviously since you can't wear furry costumes in a casino for obvious reasons, the motif sort of conflicts with that. So the hotel really, has a competing interest over there. So I think it's going to have a limiting factor on their growth over the coming years. That this is just raw numbers. That's something that raw numbers really can't show you. But even if they grow by the projections, they're not going to overtake Anthrocon next year. What could happen, it looks like, is that further confusion, which is that flat line. It looks like I left out the key here, which is unfortunate. So that purple line up top is Midwest Furfest. The blue line is, this is based on memory. Frickin' heck, I look at this chart way too much. I wish I really kept the key in. That was stupid of me. Is Anthrocon. That red line is Biggest Little Fur Con. The purple line underneath that is Furry Weekend Atlanta, which, by the way, another big one this year, which kind of went under the radar, which I didn't emphasize enough, I guess, is that Furry Weekend Atlanta actually went from 5th place to 4th place this year. It actually surpassed Further Confusion, which is that flatline one there. I believe that the green line there is, I think it's Eurofrance. This is where it gets a little weird. Or it's Furry Fiesta. It's one of those two. So, but basically it looks like if Further Confusion continues doing what it's doing this year, it's going to get surpassed by another con. I believe it's Furry Fiesta. I believe the Eurofrance is the one at the very bottom, the green one. But that being said, so nothing too major going this year, except for the fact that Midwest Furfest there crosses the 10,000 line. So to the staff of Midwest Furfest, I hope you enjoy your year. But you may want to take some good lessons learned from this year, and I'll provide additional videos dealing with the harsh the items that I did notice come up during the whole thing, minus the whole the what's the heck's the guy's name, Magnus or whoever his name is, the guy who got arrested at the convention. I'll put a link in the description below for that incident. I think that incident was handled as best as it could have been handled, and it really wasn't in the convention's control, and because you can't control everyone, and people are going to act a fool. Dogpatch did a full article on that individual and his arrest at the convention and all that stuff, and I think that I'm not going to retread that ground. It's not necessary. I think it's handled. The situation's handled, and people did whatever they could. So that will be in the description below. I won't do a whole video on that. But that being said, 2018 I think is going to be a good year. I think we're going to still work hard and get things done. I think us as a community, we're showing our stripes. We're getting out there and we're showing that we got some numbers. Still small in the factor of nerd conventions, but we're still growing as a group, and it's a good small sort of nerdy cliquey family, and I think that's something that people will enjoy about it regardless. But anyways, thank you very much for watching today. Kick that like, kick the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment sections. What do you think that the outlook is going to be for 2018? for the conventions next year. What was your feelings about Midwest Furfest and what they could have done better? What is your experience? Were you in that long attendance line? You have your own convention stories to share? Please go ahead and feel free to share them in the comment section below. I will read them. I might not respond to all of them. Thank you very much for watching again, and have a great day, guys. I'm getting the hop out of here.